With me in studio is political analyst Tshepo Kgadima. Tshepo, good morning and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
The revised rules of parliament. Firstly, will these new rules be able to strike a balance between control and democracy?
Look, maybe I'd first like to say that on the rare occasions that I found myself in Parliament, I've often quipped that I was there to remind myself why I'm not a parliamentarian. But this would have been done, would have been said in my lament of the what I was seeing, the conduct of some of the members of Parliament. So I believe that the tightening of the rules is very timely, and it is very much needed when one takes into account the events in Parliament in the last many sittings that we have seen, which have resulted even in altercations and some members of Parliament being thrown out. So certainly I do not believe that it will stifle debate or democratic process. If anything, I think the rules, what they serve to do will be to remind members of Parliament why they were elected in the first instance. I find that sometimes there's a misconception amongst members of Parliament that they are pretty much thinking of their supporters as members of a political party. My view is that the moment one is elected to that august house of being a member of Parliament, their responsibility and duty is toward South Africa and not toward their own supporters or political members. And let me give an example. Even in private sector, in corporate, when one is a director or an officer of the company, you do not act in the interest of a shareholder, but you act in the interest of the company. And the same thing would apply in this case to members of Parliament, that the moment they take an oath of office of being a member of Parliament, they therefore need to realize that now their responsibility and their duty is for South Africa and not for their own political party. So I believe that we need to see an end to the situation whereby members of Parliament spend a lot of time in political contest on their own political party other than doing the very important work of as legislators in our Parliament. Yesterday, again, there was the discussion about the land expropriation bill, which will soon be signed into an act. We expect so after it has been voted favorably. But that is a very important aspect that needed to be addressed by the House. And it was regrettable for me to see that one of the political parties, the Democratic Alliance in the state, moved out and did not participate in or objected to the land expropriation bill from debate. I think members of Parliament, it is very unfortunate that now they've had to go and have to tighten the rules because there was no observance of the decorum that is very much expected of anybody who takes that oath of office. And maybe with these new rules coming into effect from today, we hope that we will see members of Parliament now directing their efforts towards the more important work of holding the executive, of that providing that oversight role, holding the executive accountable, but at the same time ensuring that the legislation that they discuss and pass will only advance the interest of this country and ensure that, I think, a better life for all South Africans is achieved.
Tshepo, the DA has taken issue with the new order of proceedings in terms of oral questions for President and his deputy, 16 days and 9 days in advance, respectively. Is this arrangement fair, and what's your take on it?
Look, I think what we are seeing is that sometimes the political parties paint themselves into a corner that I think it will be very difficult to move out of. My own view is that the members of Parliament and political parties will really be taken much more serious once they start to really show that they are holding the interest of South Africa at the top. Many times, if one was to make a comparison with another constitutional democracy, the oldest for that matter, being the United States, you find that though you might have two the Democrats and the Republicans, but the moment whether one is in the House of Senate or in Congress, they always conduct themselves in terms of what is in the interest of the United States. And I think it is important for us in South Africa also to move to that level whereby questions can be what is in the interest of South Africa despite our own political persuasion, which might be on matters of style or on matters of ideology, but is that in the interest of the country?
Talking about the USA and all that, in relation to this, what is the practice of in other democracies in Africa or the West, for instance, when in relation to the revised rule?
Look, we've seen, I think, a number of video clips that have been circulating on social media about various parliaments across the world, and whereby we've seen altercations and all of that. It's very humorous. You of course, it causes you to laugh and say, well, we are not the only ones here in South Africa that are experiencing that. However, again, because not all countries are constitutional democracies, when one takes into account true constitutional democracies, such as South Africa, such as the United States, I believe that the rules provide that platform that ensures that members of parliament can conduct themselves in a manner that is according to the decorum expected and that in a manner that is appropriate. But above all, to ensure that, as I stress, what is in the interest, because they are elected first and foremost to ensure that the interest of the country are paramount. Now, in other countries, you find that the parliament doesn't have that much leeway as we have in terms of what our constitution guarantees, that freedom of expression, more so for the members of parliament. You find that the same provisions we have in our constitutions do not apply, and I will not want to name some of those countries for, not to create controversy. But I think we are in a very unique situation as a country, that we've got this very progressive constitution. However, my fear has been that even with that progressive constitution, with rules that are very much reasonable, we have seen that there has been an abuse of process. Some of the members of parliament have been conducting themselves in a manner that only seeks to delay the very important work of parliament, looking at parochial interest of such members. And I believe that it is important for members of parliament at all times to bear this in mind, that they are elected into that position not to serve the interest of their own party, but to serve the interest of the country. Because even with the ruling party, as it is being referred to, it cannot go and govern for its supporters. It has to govern for what is in the best interest of the country. And many times you hear that even within the ruling party, there is criticism that somehow maybe how the executive or cabinet conduct themselves, that they might disagree, but the decision would have been what is in the interest of the country. And once we ask those questions, I believe that as a country and as a democracy, we can really ensure that the great majority of people who do not have, who rely more so in terms of parliament to make rules, legislation that can advance their interest, that indeed they can say we have a parliament that serves our interest. And today I don't think that we can answer that question convincingly, that indeed Parliament has been able to function in the manner that it has been really elected to do.
Well, thank you very much, Tshepo. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for this morning.
Thank you.
That was Tshepo Kgadima, political analyst. Quickly, just